Hi everyone, Evelina from Arcadier here. Today on Inspire, we have June Bu, Arcadier's own Head of Group Strategy and General Manager for the USA. June has over a decade of experience in strategy as previous Head of Distribution Channels and Head of Strategy at Intercontinental Hotels Group. She also held leadership positions with Boston Consulting Group and PwC. Today, she'll be talking about how to create a go-to-market strategy for any business. Hi June, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Hi, Evelina. I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Very excited to hear what you have to share. So maybe to start, perhaps you can just share a little bit about yourself and why it's so important to create a go-to-market or a GTM strategy.
Okay. About myself, so you've actually given a very great intro, so I don't have to cover too much. I would just basically say that I do enjoy doing strategy. I had been working in consulting for almost 10 years before I joined the corporate world with a couple of organizations, including Intercontinental Hotels Group, and that's where I head up strategy. I went on to sales and marketing, which gave me a tremendous great experience in the areas of sales and marketing, particularly the digital marketing area. I think when it comes to go-to-market, why it's so important. Go-to-market typically happens at a point in time whereby the business is looking for expansion and growth. You typically will have set up your business, run it for a while, possibly getting more and more successful. And then you're at this point, a pivoting point saying that, okay, I need to actually find new growth, potentially to address the questions that your investors might ask you. So you're looking at a growth strategy to help you to go into a new market or to expand your market share in the existing market segments. So it's a way to acquire, to retain, as well as to grow your customers. And of course, that leads to revenue.
Awesome. I'm sure everybody would like to know more about this. So why don't we just jump right in?
Okay. So a lot of times, everybody asks me, is like, when you want to start doing a go-to-market strategy, where do you start? And the most important question that you have to answer is that, what is the go-to-market strategy for? I've just mentioned that it's actually to grow, is to acquire, is to retain customers. And of course, that means that we have to look at customers. It's very important to start with your customers. A lot of times companies are looking to develop, they fall into the, the problem or the challenge of starting from their own seller perspective and do a product-driven strategy, or they might do a seller-driven strategy. That typically may work in the beginning of the business development. However, as the business grows and then you're getting to a point of having more recognition in the market, starting with the customers is the right thing to do, and the only way to become a sustainable business. Let me share with you some slides. So I've just mentioned about the fact that it is the most important thing. And the next thing we look at would be, it's also important to add in the context of both the market and the competition. As you can see, the three bubbles or the three circles, the pyramid triangle, I call it, is very much intertwined. You cannot look at the customers without actually not looking at your competitors, nor without looking at the market. And most of the time, from a customer perspective, we typically will start with what we call the customer segmentation, which I will go through a little bit more in detail so you get a better sense and flavor of what you need to actually prepare yourself for. But from a market perspective, there's a couple of things that you should look at. One would be definitely the trends. You need to look at what's happening in the market, what's actually up and coming, what's actually declining. You need to understand what are some of the key success factors of succeeding in that particular market. From that, you could look at if the business has been existing, you could refer to some of the best practices, case studies that are around, which you should be able to get more information given the fact that this is an internet age. You also have to look at what are some of the more profitable sectors. So how do you define all the different sectors in the market? And once you define them, try to get as much information, whether it's through interviews, research, conversations that you have in the market, attending trade shows. to understand what are some of the growth and profitable sectors, and are you targeting those sectors? The stage of the life cycle of the product that you are going to offer is also very important. You need to understand whether it is in an introductory stage, is it at a phase of growth, is it at a phase of maturity, or is it declining? Typically, the best business to be in is definitely at the point of growth. Even mature is not a bad thing, because under the BCG growth matrix framework, we call it the cash cow business. So these are some of the things that you need to look at from a market perspective. From a competition, that's also quite key. Things that you could look at when it comes to competitors, definitely get a sense of what a product being offered, what are the services that's being basically offered. Look at what are their value propositions, what are the things that they are claiming that their products and services could offer to the market that will help them succeed in their business. And does yours compete with that, or do you offer something different? Pricing, you need to get a sense of what's their pricing strategy. Are they targeting mass market with very affordable, low cost, low value pricing? Are they going through a more premium pricing? How do you actually get there? So get a sense of what the competitions and pricing options are, and then see how they're targeting their customer segments in relation to. And one thing I love to look at, which I don't know whether people tend to look at, is that since we're talking about customers, look at the customer feedback and the reviews that they're posted on the internet, both good and bad, because both of them will give you a feel of what might be the opportunities that you can claim, or you could basically structure your value proposition around by seeing that could you address some of the key challenges and the pain points of the customers who are saying that they are really not very satisfied with what's happening or what's being given by the competition. And if you could address that pain that they have, then you generally have a conversion of a customer over to your side. The last but not least around competition is understand what's their competitive advantage, and do they really have one? Competitive advantage is quite difficult to achieve, because you need to get to a point whereby there's some level of differences, what the consumers or the customers perceive as different. Airbnb, for instance, they have a competitive advantage of a holistic basically offering of an integrated basically accommodation and lodging reservation services across multiple kinds of lodging types. Whatever that you need, if you need a condo, if you need a house, you need a hotel, if you actually need a cabin, for instance, that you're looking to book when you're going for a nature, basically camping trip, they have every single thing, which if you compare to the hotels, for instance, which is my old company, we don't have that. IHG doesn't have that. So you need to understand what is we need to define what is your own competitive advantage versus your competition when you try to start with a go-to-market strategy. Yeah. So I was talking about giving you a little bit more flavor around the customer segmentation. Is that really needed? A lot of people will ask me, it's like, I have this product, I'm so basically excited to venture into it. I think there's definitely a market for it. And we always ask the question basically back to the customer or my client segment, which is that who are your customer segments? Who are you trying to target? And having a clear answer to that is very important for you when it comes to go-to-market. Segmentation could be done in many different ways. One of the most common methods, or the four most common groupings they call it within customer segmentation, is geographic, demographic, behavioral, as well as psychographic. So geographic, I think everybody is aware of. Where you're located. Is this a local business? Is this a national business? Is this a regional business? Is this an international business? Is this a key market strategy business? You need to actually define where your customers are sitting within the geographic sense. For example, if there's a marketplace offering baby products and baby services, then most of the time the business would probably start more local. And then eventually, if it gets very successful, your go-to-market may be defining, could I expand this in another key city that might have a very similar geographic and a market, characteristics to my current one. Demographics, I think everybody will know that we all define our customers, especially from a B2C, if it's a consumer B2C business. You will look at things like age, you will look at things like the income level, you will look at what's their, whether they're families. So some of these demographics comes in really handy. And this very obvious example will be the retail business in apparel business. You would definitely need to know who your customer groups are, and likely that you will need to combine one of the demographics with one of the other segments, which is the physiographics. So physiographics is around basically things like what's the lifestyle of the person. Yeah. So if in the retail business, you are looking at apparel, you are targeting ladies, your business is around targeting ladies from age of 20 to 40. Are you looking at working ladies? Are you looking at basically travelers? What are you looking at? So you actually have to combine two of the characteristics when it comes to customer segmentation to get yourself a clearer idea of who you're targeting. Behavioral will be more like how much time they're spending on shopping. Is this a customer that's looking to shop online most of the time, or they still prefer going to a retail shop and potentially then switching over to the online shopping once they get a better sense and an understanding of the sizing of this particular store, for instance. So this four will help you to basically segment. The rest of the other basically things that you got to look at is that I typically like to start, we talked about market earlier. So when you finish with your market definition and the sizing, that kind of gives you what we consider as the value at stake. So if someone asks you what's the value at stake, what's the market sizing of the business, you potentially will be having this answer saying that I think this particular business in apparel, focusing on baby products, baby apparel, will be around $10 million for a market of, let's say, Singapore, for instance. I'm sure the number is bigger. So having a clear understanding of that allows you to actually define if the market has, when you match it up with competition, is the market basically populated with too many companies and competitors that's targeting it, or actually there's more opportunity to grow? Or are you looking for a cannibalization, a poaching strategy from your competition in order to grow a market that is of a certain size, which is slow moving, for instance? So once you get that, then the whole segmentation comes in. And in consulting, when we used to be working on clients' projects, one of the most important things that we say we got to do is develop hypothesis. So what do I mean by hypothesis development or generation? It simply means that make a statement, make an assumption. Make assumption that this particular customer they're looking at is worth this amount of value, or there is an opportunity in you pursuing it. When you make a statement, what happens is that when you start developing further the customer segments that we just talked about, you kind of be able to match back and make reference to say that it's my statement that I've made earlier, which is my hypothesis. Is it correct? If it's not correct, then change it. If it's correct, then refine it. Get as clear as possible to the customer segmentation that you're looking at. So it saves a lot of time when it comes to doing hypothesis generation, because you have an assumption that you're trying to validate. And if the validation goes through, you pretty much move on. But if you don't have anything to start with, then you might be just shooting basically darts into the sky and not knowing where you're actually targeting. And that is very difficult for business when you have funding shortage or when you have people shortage. Once you have done all this, then you try to basically map every single segment to understanding what's the value and what's the sizing of that segment. You know about the market, and then this particular segment that you're looking at will be a certain pie cut of that value of the market. And then you try to attribute what is the opportunity of targeting that market segment or the customer segments to that. And once you're done, you just kind of go on to developing more of the go-to-market shortly. Go-to-market strategy. So how many different components are there? It's a very interesting question to do because every time I do a go-to-market, I realize something. 10 years ago when I started doing it as a consultant, until now, which I'm still doing it for the companies that I've worked with in the last 5 to 6 years, the component doesn't change. The answers change. So what does it happen? Because when you want to go to market, you might be basically changing in the technology, basically usage, you might be changing of the environment. But when you go to market, you still need to know the product. You still need to define your pricing. You still need to define whether you would like to pursue a brand strategy, which would then lead on to how do you market in order to get to those customers that you have just mentioned that you wanted in your customer segmentation. And then you go into how do you do sales? How do you actually acquire those customers? And in this day of age, then digital channels is one of the more important and actually more important digital channels to focus on. So when it comes to product, let's go through that first. Knowing what you're selling, how many products are you selling, what kind of product categories are there will be important, because the clearer you are, and if it matches to what the industry is referring to, because the categorization is of a certain familiarity with your customers, it's probably easier to get traction from that point of view. Some products sometimes might you might have to look at coupling great customer service with that. In particular, if you're in a business which is fairly mature and you have certain products which are not exactly unique, it might be for instance, we were talking about retail. So you might be in a designer retail marketplace, for instance. So you have a lot of designers. One of the things that you could look at is whether or not your products, besides being the fact that they could be in pants, in categories of dresses, and then maxi dresses, and all the different categories, is whether they have the designers that they're looking at. Are you targeting new designers, or are they the actual more prominent brands that everybody is aware of? So having that clarity will help in positioning those products to the customers. When it comes to service, it's a very important aspect to consider. Most of the business that I know, which are fairly successful and which are able to grow and scale, have great customer service. So when there's a question being posed, when there's a comment being raised, when there's an email that gets got through to your mailbox, having a quick turnaround is very important. In fact, within an hour would be great for certain kind of business. For some, you might require no more than 24 hours. But service is definitely one component to consider when it comes to the component of product. Pricing would be the second thing to look at when it comes to go-to-market. Are you looking to price it at a premium? Are you looking to price it slightly above your competition? Or are you trying to price lower than your competitors so that you can move some of the customers over to your business? So you need to define what is it that you're looking at, and then find the right pricing to match what the customers are looking for, and understand if the customers are sensitive to price. Certain segments, certain kind of business, customers may not actually mind, or they do not mind having to pay for premium pricing if they can get the service that they want, a product that is unique to the market. So there's no need to underprice your product if you have something different to offer, or you have something coupled different to make it competitive to the market. Branding and marketing is key. So understanding how you're going to market, what kind of brand positioning, what are your value propositions that you are communicating to your customer segments that you have identified, becomes something that will help you to understand how to talk to them better as you actually refine your marketing. You need to understand what message will actually get through to the customers. Customers right now, consumers are being bombarded with a lot of different messages, whether it's traditional media, or whether it's on TV, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's online when they surf the internet. So knowing basically what they are looking for and what are some of the key phrases or the keywords that would trigger their interest to stop by your website or to click through to your website becomes very important. When it comes to sales, I typically like to break up the physical sales component from the digital channels, which you can see from my diagram. So when it comes to sales, understand if you need a sales force. A lot of the marketplace, the e-commerce marketplace that we are seeing right now, generally don't have a big sales force to start with. The reason being that many of our clients are in the business of very local business, and they're looking at using the internet, which is the digital channels, doing digital marketing to assist in the expansion and the basic promotion of their products and their services. But for some other services where it makes sense, having a sales force to complement your digital marketing is also quite important. And very often, if you deal in the B2B business, having a sales force, being able to have a face-to-face meeting, going to trade shows with your sales force, identifying the right basic clients, and then doing cold calling, they actually might help quite a fair bit because a lot of the B2B business may not have the time nor basically the knowledge as to surf the internet and then try to basically find what they're looking for. Sometimes they need to present the opportunity to them versus them actually seeking out themselves. Reselling and partnerships are actually two interesting channels to look at. If your business allows you to work with another company, to have a reseller to just help in reselling your products, that actually works. In a lot of the e-commerce business I've seen, typically reselling is not a common tactic that the business actually uses, which for good reasons, which is that a lot of times the marketplace was served or if not developed in order to go direct to the customers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But partnerships would be one, I think, for a lot of the marketplaces. It's not a common, but it might be something worth looking at. So if you are in complementary business within the industry sector we are focusing. So for instance, you might be in the cake baking, basic cake business, or and then you're looking to partner. So typically, when would cakes be requested? When would someone actually request for cakes? If your customer segments have indicated that your cakes are for certain occasions, for instance, baby birthdays, anniversaries, wedding, basically celebrations, then you're looking at potential partners that you could partner with, so that you could either perhaps conduct marketing to their customers as they are basically pursuing their customers. They have a little bit more products and services that they could offer by partnering with yourself. Last but not least, as I mentioned, which is the digital channels. Digital marketing is key. You cannot survive in this business that you are running an online marketplace without doing digital marketing. But what you can consider is, depending on how much funds you have, how much resources you have, is to prioritize what you can do. I've mentioned that there are probably a few components. There will be your usual search engine optimization. You could do search engine marketing, which is through Google, Baidu, depending on which countries you're from. Social marketing is also one whereby you could utilize, and depending on where your customer sits and where they typically would have a profile. You could do your Facebook, you could do your Twitter, you could do LinkedIn, basically as your social marketing. Sometimes you may not be required to do all the social platforms. You just need to find out where your customers are actually interacting when it comes to social channels, and then be there for your customers. And that includes setting up basically a brand profile or company profile in those social channels. Web, mobile, web business, you already have a business on the internet. So that kind of is the very basic of doing some level of a web marketing. Mobile will be around being mobile responsive. It will be potentially considering an app. I typically would not recommend businesses to start on the app right from the start, unless you think there is a great opportunity, and then your business is better managed, and your interaction is much more fluid and smooth with your customers through an app. The reason being that you need to get people to download an app. So that means you have another strategy, another plan to develop, which is a mobile strategy, a mobile app strategy, which you need to define more resources, where you're trying to do, which customers they're trying to pull in to have them to download. And once they're downloaded, acquisition is done, then you need to actually work on your retention strategy. And then app requires updates. There's always updates that needs to match up to the user satisfaction and the user request of your customers when it's a mobile app. So think about it clearly, whether your business requires an app. If you can make do with a mobile responsive website, that might actually do the trick, because you can always encourage your customers to bookmark. And once you have sufficient, I guess, a base when it comes to customers, then you consider adding an app to give greater value to your customers. Then that's something that your customers would be happy, or if not satisfied, to receive. Video typically is a very interesting, basically, channel. We've seen a lot of viral videos. If we are able to get to that, if you're able to generate virality through video, great. And then having basically a 60 seconds, no more than 180, basically a 1.5 minute, 2 minute video to illustrate what your business is about might be interesting. Or if you have certain successes around the business, you have gotten an award, you have great customers who are giving you reviews, you could use all this content to create a video coupled with the launch of your new products that you have on the website. So think about how you can use your video in order to get some level of traction and viewership. So all these different basic sub-digital channels that I just mentioned pretty much are just channels. You have to create a more holistic plan, and the components of a more holistic digital marketing plan will be things like how do you use these channels to create a content marketing strategy. When it comes to content marketing, one of the most basic and most obvious way of using it is to create blogs, is to participate in forums, for instance. All these are actually great ways of getting through and out, reaching out to your customers. But you need to decide whether is this something that is needed for your business or not. If your competition, which you have done your research on, is doing a fair bit of content marketing, then I would suggest that do something about it. The reason being that most likely when certain keywords are being searched on any of the search engines, your competitors would have gotten a much higher ranking given the amount of content that they have published. Of course, a lot of content needs to be qualified and good content, and that's how you actually get your ranking up in the Google search, for instance. Email marketing will be something to consider if you're using more of a web, basically. Targeting and retargeting. If you have someone who actually just stopped by your website or any of your links or things that you have your target, the blogs they've written or the video that you've posted, you can always retarget all these customers because they have actually shown some level of interest. Typically, retargeting is a cheaper form of acquiring a customer versus you actually going out fresh, targeting a new batch of customers. And then, so that's kind of the general key components of a go-to-market strategy. I thought this was actually quite funny and interesting. Someone actually said that if you have more money than brains, you should focus on outbound marketing. But if you have more brains than money, then you should focus on inbound marketing. I pulled this out because for a lot of the business who doesn't have the financial muscles in the beginning, doing inbound marketing, thinking through how you can achieve that will be very important to help to get the best and the most out of the resources that you have. And some of the examples that you could see, and you can easily extract some of this information if you Google search or internet search. The inbound marketing is defined as bringing in customers. So generally, any marketing tactic that allows you to bring a customer to you versus you reaching directly out in a more intrusive manner is called the inbound marketing. Outbound marketing will be more of any marketing tactics which you push it out, like cold calling. For instance, going to a trade show to promote your business, for instance. These are considered as outbound marketing. And in this day and age, you need to do a combination of both, or if you have resource shortage, then focusing on inbound marketing would be probably the better thing to do, because this is how a lot of the consumers and customers are behaving, which is being on the internet, basically looking at content, doing research, trying to find out more about the things that they're interested in, looking for options. So inbound marketing will be one where it assists in you drawing the crowd to your website. The last but not least, what I would like to basically leave with you is that this is what we call a ideal customer profile, ICP. So we talk about the go-to-market, we were talking about the customer segmentation. And at the end of the day, if you have the ICP, then I would say that you will have a very clear idea of who you're targeting, what you should be saying, where you should be marketing basically spending your resources on. Because if you look at this profile, what it does is that it has given you a sense of what's the geographic, the demographics, the psychographics, as well as the behavioral characteristics of your customers. You're looking at their education, their salary, their hobbies, what's their basic career, where their career is, and if they happen to be a company where there are multiple stakeholders, you need to find the decision maker. And a lot of times the customer profile will allow you to identify what are the pain points, what are the challenges that they're facing, which will create opportunities for yourself, which means that when they are looking for you as the problem solver, what can you offer and how should you talk to them? What are the messages that they're looking for you to gain their attention? Where are they going to research, or where are they usually interacting? So if you can identify this channel, then you can promote your messages in this channel specifically to these customer segments. So I think if I could leave you with that, I think these are kind of the key components as well as what we look at when we go to a go-to-market strategy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, June. That was extremely informative and in-depth. Have some follow-up questions as well as just general questions about go-to-market strategy.
Okay.
But first, to go back to your slides, on your second slide where there was the Venn diagram of customers, competitors, and market, you shared that it's important to obviously put customers in the context of competition and market. However, so my question is, what if the competition market maybe isn't existent, or the entrepreneur themselves, they're creating an offering that's very novel, whether it's a product or a service? Then how do they, contextualize their product?
Okay. It's a very good question. So how do you define a market where there's no market specifically? I think there's always a market. First of all, so what kind of novel product are we looking at? If your novel product is there to substitute something that's more traditional, for instance, a new medical device that is there to replace another more existing device that is solving a certain issue, maybe a pain issue or blood pressure, for instance. It is novel, but there is still a market. So you need to, if you can't, then start with what are some of the potential customers that you might be targeting, and look at what those customers are utilizing or using right now or buying right now, and then make reference back to the market and the competition. Because when it is novel, then you have an additional challenge, which is that how do you get people to understand what you're trying to do, and then what you're trying to sell, and how does that benefit them? So you still need to go back and look at what are some of the references. Is that a pain point? Is that a new opportunity? Any kind of novel product is always there to address a challenge or a pain point or a new opportunity, that a need that has arrived because of a change in lifestyle or a change in the business cycle. So from there, you make reference and then you try to find the best, they say, proxy for that, whether it's competition or market. I hope that helps.
Definitely. And then on the next slide, we were talking, I have two questions on slide 3. So first, is you're talking about customer segmentation and then hypothesis validation. How much time do you normally give yourself to validate, your hypothesis, or how much information do you need until you realize that, yes, this is correct and you refine, or, oh no, this is not right and I need to, go back and come up with a new hypothesis?
Typically, I use no more than a week to develop the hypothesis, which means to get validation is my hypothesis makes sense. If you have business partners or a team that you're working with, ensure that you have actually bounced off with them to see if you're actually getting to the right, basically, target statement that we're looking at. And once you've done that, I generally give myself 2 weeks. 2 weeks to find out as much information that will validate my hypothesis. And within the 2 weeks, if my hypothesis is justified, then I go forward to further understand the customer segments based on those hypotheses that are validated. If after 2 weeks I realize that my hypothesis doesn't make sense, and then something is perhaps needs rectification, I go back and change it. And then I spend a little bit more time trying to validate the new hypothesis, because when you redevelop your hypothesis, that's already with the existing 2 weeks of information that you have gathered, and your hypothesis is probably on the right track. And then you validate a little bit more based on what you have found out and what's the new hypothesis that you have developed, and go on from there. We typically, if you actually doesn't start with a hypothesis, we find that clients might take double the time to actually get to the answers that they want. But if you start with something, even you're researching, there's a number of different ways you could do it. You could do it through primary research. You could do it through basically internet research. Generally, we will always start with the internet research or any kind of white papers in the event if they're available, and then look at those information, get an understanding of the context and the breadth of the industry or the hypothesis. And then at the point whereby the hypothesis is fairly validated, you could complement and add on focus groups or doing more internet basic surveys to get more information to ensure that you're getting on the right track. Asking the questions about their customer segments, which is those behavioral, the demographics, the geographics that we just talked about, those characteristics, then you ask more about those things to clarify and sharpen your hypothesis.
Got it. All right. And then the next point I wanted to bring up was in regards to the customer segmentation and what markets to go after. So, in that slide you had, how big is this market? What are the competitors doing? What's your advice for entrepreneurs or businesses that are just deciding perhaps between going for a smaller market with less competition versus a larger market with more competition? Obviously, there's lots of checks and balances, and there's some advantages here and disadvantages there. How do you normally advise to balance all of that?
If you're following the approach that I just given you, then you will be able to define what we call the value at stake. A value at stake is an estimated quantification of what is the total revenue of this market that you're targeting. So you just mentioned two broad markets, a small market with less competition or a big market with more competition. So when you look at a small market with less competition, you might be looking at quantifying of that. Just let's take a number. One might be a $10 million basically dollar business. One might be a $500 million business, which is a larger market with a whole lot of competition. When it's a 10 million business, where is it located? Is this a local business or is this an international market? Every single basic extension of that requires you to inject and invest more resources. So when you map your cost and benefit to the market sizing that you have actually obtained, you will probably get a better picture as to what. You also have to decide whether you have enough resourcing to pursue a large market. I always basically suggest to recommend to my clients that if it's a new business they are starting, start small and then dream big. So if I have a preference without knowing what business that they have, and then just give me two scenarios, I will do my research and my basic segmentation. But I will probably define what will be the small market that has fewer basic competition, so that I can establish the brand, I can establish product, and then further it. Because by then, if your product and brands are established and reputable in the market, you could add on and extend your product range and then go for the bigger one. And even if you're looking at the big market with a lot of competition, break the market down. Get it down to a certain segment so that you can target that segment and work through it. And that could be done by being more targeted with your customer segments instead of broadly doing a mass market basis marketing plan, which is target two particular customer segments that you're focusing on, and then test it out and see if your product works, and then refine and then broaden your targeting and your expansion. Yeah.
Awesome. Very great advice. Definitely, I feel like sometimes new businesses, you get so excited about this huge opportunity market, and then, sometimes you can get lost in the big dream, and you really do need to focus on the smaller things that are much more palatable and doable for you. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that during your time, you see that the components don't change, but the answers do, or the answers change. Throughout your time, I'm just curious to know, what have you noticed changing in terms of answers?
I think a lot of the changes are around getting better clarification around sharpening of your answers towards your customer segments. In the past, whenever we hear about customers talk about, let's take, for example, consumer segment business, B2C business, whether it's apparel or whether it's groceries, a lot of it is based on geographic, and then maybe based on neighborhood, and then they will target based on occupation with some level of a clarity when it comes to the age group, the income level of a household, for instance. Right now, these information are considered as very basic. So your answer starts changing because you now start to understand how are they behaving. Are they behaving in the sense whereby are they more prone towards more value-added promotions? Do they go online to search? Are they a coupon users? You get as much out of some of the behavioral traits, and then you get basically more information on that. The other aspect of it will be more distribution. The changes are coming through when it comes to distribution, your answers to your distribution. How do you distribute your product? Any entrepreneurial business who are running marketplaces, they are doing distribution purely online. So when it's that, then a lot of your digital marketing, go-to-market basically answers falls with what are you doing online, do so. And then how are you getting to your customers online? And then the strange thing is that when your business gets to a point where it's scaling and then it's going more international or regional, some business may opt to have more brick and mortar, which is the reverse trend. Yeah. But in what I've seen so far, in the past, it's always you start brick and mortar and then you start having an e-commerce website to enhance the distribution. But right now, we are seeing a little bit of a difference when it comes to how you form it, how you form your marketing strategy. Yeah.
Very interesting. So just some general questions about, strategy and the whole GTM. What's the most common challenge you see when creating a go-to-market strategy?
Common challenge. I actually find that the common challenge would be getting the right, having accountability of the go-to-market strategy. When someone is so enthusiastic on business, you've developed this really clear and really excellent go-to-market strategy. What happens is that then the execution happens. And the execution often happens in a way whereby if you don't have enough resource, you start cutting down the number of things that you do. Or you get excited with certain things and then you didn't follow through with the rest of the stuff that you said you wanted to do. So that whole accountability is that when you develop the go-to-market strategy, is find the right people that will take accountability to following it through, and then establish checkpoints, whether it's every 2 weeks or whether it's every month or at least every quarter, is to review how the plan is progressing and then refine and sharpen the plan further. Yeah, because a plan is a plan. You need to execute to see the results. But if you don't follow through, then it gets really difficult to validate and justify the hypothesis that you set, and you will be actually back to a little bit of a square one where, what am I actually doing? And I'm so successful, but what happens with the other segments that I was targeting? Yeah. So I think accountability is some of the things I've seen, which is a bit more tricky to manage.
So interesting. Definitely very important. Execution, I think, is something that everybody has a little bit of a tough time doing, for sure, just because there's so many things to do, and
Yeah, definitely a lot of things to do. Yeah. Prioritization.
Yeah. So another general question is, what do you think most people actually tend to overlook when they create their strategy?
What do they tend to overlook? It's getting people on board. When you have a business, you have team members that you work with, whether it's your co-founder or whether it's the employees that are assisting you with uploading of the pictures and all this stuff. It is important to get them on board. You want to get people excited about the business, about the things that you're trying to do. And in particular, you're looking at the go-to-market, so you're targeting growth. So as you're doing it, it's not just yourself being excited with the opportunity. It's also getting the people below you, your peers, excited with that. And then when that happens, then you generally get a big wave of energy that goes through that will support each other when it comes to, they say, resolving problems or even identifying opportunities. Because once your team knows about the go-to-market, and if they witness anything basically that would justify or assist in the growth based on your plans, then they will be able to contribute and suggest better ideas, or if not, assist in executing the plans, even without you saying. So getting people on board so that they understand where the company is going is actually very important. Yeah.
Awesome. That's very good advice. I mean, it does take, a village or a whole team to do everything. You can't really just do everything on your own. You really do need to get everybody on board and excited. All right. So my last question for you is, what's one piece of advice that you'd like to share with everybody today?
One piece of advice. Okay. Go-to-market is a very exciting stage of a business. Yeah. So I always think that you should enjoy it, get everybody to enjoy it, get everybody on board, and then just be prepared for changes. It is okay to change as the plan gets executed, because like Forrest Gump, right? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But with a go-to-market plan, you might be able to manage it better.
Awesome advice. Actually, so I have a follow-up on that. When do you change your go-to-market strategy? At what point do you think that, all right, we tried this, and then, now it's time to alter?
Okay. Typically, we develop a go-to-market strategy for about 12 to almost, I would say 2 years, 1 to 3 years, depending. I think depending on the sophistication of the business. If the business is fairly simple, then I would say do a plan for at least 18 months to 24 months. And then you do checkpoints at least every quarter. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, June, for sitting down and chatting with us on go-to-market strategy. If anybody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I think via email, you could, my email is june@arcadier.com. So if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out, and I will try my best to answer and to assist you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. Everyone, thank you for tuning in on today's session of Inspire. Until next time, be inspired.